Elijah McCoy was bored and frustrated. It was the late 1800s, and Elijah McCoy was working as an engineer on a train. His job was to oil the steam engine at every stop. The train would stop at each small town along the track and pick up or drop off a passenger or two. Each time, Elijah had to hop down, oil the engine, and hop back on. Hop down, oil, hop on. Hop down, oil, hop on. Thus went his monotonous day. Because he got tired of that, Elijah McCoy invented an automatic oiling system for the steam engine. It worked so well that soon every steam engine was automatically oiled by McCoy's system. Elijah invented other things to make jobs easier, and because of his success, people began copying his inventions. The copies usually were not as good as McCoy's originals, however, and the quality of his work became so well known that soon customers everywhere were demanding the real McCoy. They would accept no substitute, nothing less than the original, nothing less than the real McCoy. That's why even today it's common to refer to something that's the original as the real McCoy. Welcome to TV, Tennessee Valley Church. Today we come to the second of the 10 Commandments, which says, no copies, just the real McCoy. Let's hear from Exodus chapter 20, verses 4 through 6.
You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them, or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents, to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments.
The second commandment is similar to the first. The first says, you shall have no other gods before me. The second says, don't make images, idols, and worship them. God is so beyond us, so much greater than we can imagine. People always have been tempted to come up with smaller, simpler, understandable, tangible things to make God more accessible. Idols. God says, don't create likenesses of me in your heads and with your hands. Don't reduce me to something small enough for you to conjure up for yourselves. If you can think it and make it, it's not me. So let's define idols. I looked up the word in my Bible dictionaries again this week, and this is going to be our working definition for today. I believe it captures the Bible's meaning. Idol. Something of religious significance, something that gives life meaning and offers extraordinary help. Conceived in the minds of humans, that stands between us and the biblical understanding of, pure adoration of, and unbridled surrender to the true God. Again, an idol is something of religious significance, something that gives life meaning and offers extraordinary help. Conceived in the minds of humans, that stands between us and the biblical understanding of, pure adoration of, and unbridled surrender to the one true God. Let's ask the obvious question. What are potential idols today? Remember, an idol is something of religious significance, meaning it's something that gives life meaning and offers extraordinary help, conceived in the minds of humans, that stands between us and the biblical understanding of, the pure adoration of, and the unbridled surrender to the true God. Here's one potential idol: technology. Oh, Travis, you're not one of those anti-technology kooks, are you? Nope, I'm not anti-technology. I'm grateful for it. The advances in agriculture and healthcare being made by scientists right here in Huntsville, for example, are wonderfully amazing. Well, and Travis, technology is not religious. Well, I don't know about that. Remember, when I say religious, I'm talking about something that gives life meaning and promises extraordinary help. And people are looking increasingly to technology for meaning and help. So I'd argue that for some, there's at least a religious component to technology. But how might technology be an idol? Well, here's an example. I was fascinated by Michael Smerconish's story a few weeks ago on the increasing isolation and loneliness of American young men. In that story, he said, the more connected through technology we've become, the more lonely and detached from each other we've become. There's been an existential crisis for young men in particular for years, Smerconish said, and now with the ability to get, he said, an AI, artificial intelligence girlfriend, it's getting even worse. AI girlfriend, I thought, so I Googled it. I was shocked at how common that is, and I saw Smerconish's point about how isolating and emotionally dangerous technology can be, and how people can try in vain to find meaning in technology, and how technology can be an idol. I bring this up not to slam technological advances, not at all. I bring this up to raise a warning. In the 1960s, Huntsville's most famous citizen, Dr. Wernher von Braun, warned us about advances in technology. Our ethics are not keeping up with our science, he feared. His hope was that religion would provide an ethical rudder for all the rapidly unfolding technological innovations. Von Braun believed the voice of the church in this conversation would be crucial. Certainly, churches must be careful not to endanger the freedom of scientific pursuit, he warned, but scientific pursuit desperately needs a conscience. And the church, von Braun said, should be that conscience. He wrote, "It seems that we are only one step away from being able to tamper with the features of man. Such a capability not only raises gruesome aspects of future dictators and madmen, it also touches on the fundamental issue of the dignity of man. It is here where, in my opinion, the church should step in." Frankly, I don't know the answers to the issues I'm raising. I'm not qualified to address this at a high level. But perhaps I can simply say to you and to me that a relationship generated by artificial intelligence cannot take the place of real people, and that technology cannot replace our Creator and Father. And science can make life much better, but science is not the ultimate answer to our deepest needs. Jesus is. Here's another potential idol, our free will, our ability to make moral choices. In other words, we can idolize our moral freedom. That's kind of complicated, so let's talk about that. Colossians 3, 5 and 6 reads, "Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed, all of which is idolatry." We can make an idol of our moral freedom. It's idolatry when we elevate our choice of pleasure and our preferences over the loving intent of the Creator. Both Colossians 3 and Romans 1 condemn the willingness to prioritize human ideas about sexuality and any other immoral, unethical choices over God's revealed standards. Both Colossians 3 and Romans 1 call that idolatry. We don't get to decide right and wrong. Our role is to discern, as best we can, God's plan for us. If one's idea about anything takes precedent over God's plan and instructions, that's idolatry. It's replacing God's intent with the idol of our freedom. And here's another potential idol: worship experience and preference. Have you ever known of, or maybe been part of, a worship war? Worship wars are disagreements in churches over a worship style, like hymnals and an organ versus screens and guitars. Sometimes those wars have divided churches. Sometimes those wars came when people have made idols out of their stylistic preferences. The truth is that worship styles are mere delivery systems helping us connect with and express our adoration of the object of our worship, God the Creator. If you attend church or grew up in a church, you probably have a preference of worship style, and that's very fine. But let's never let our stylistic preferences become an idol, a potentially divisive idol. By the way, as a side note, If you're not involved in a church right now, I hope you'll find one. The people won't be perfect, and their worship styles won't be perfect either. But they need you, and you need them. In a few minutes, I'll be back with the real biggie, the grand poobah, the big kahuna of idols.
I'm Kristen Prasad, Minister to Kids and Families, and these two with me this morning, if you're a regular TV church viewer, you probably recognize them. We have Aaron Jackson, who is our Minister of Music and Worship, and Michael Wally, who is our Minister of Contemporary Worship. And so just to get us started today, let me ask you, what is it that distinguishes your two worship styles from one another?
Okay, well, for my service, it's a contemporary service, and there's usually, more often than not, there's a full band, so there's drums, there's a keyboard, there's electric guitar, electric bass, acoustic, pretty much a lot of instruments that we want to throw up there, but those are kind of the ones that are usually up there. There's some weeks we'll throw a mandolin up there and kind of dial it back a little bit with no electric guitar. It just kind of depends on the week, but that's kind of more often than not, that's what you're going to see up there.
Okay.
And our service is traditional, but it's not antiquated or stale. There's a freshness to it. We use choir and orchestra to lead that service, but we kind of do all types of music in various times. We could use soloists. Micah comes in and sings, or we'll also do a bluegrass band or things like that. But our music is founded in our rich hymnody, but also we use some of the fresh new songs that are being written as well to sing.
So can you tell me a little bit about your philosophy of worship? So Aaron, you want to start us this time?
Sure. So for me, my philosophy of worship always begins with the Bible. So it's my goal, whatever we're studying that Sunday from our pastor in the Bible, that we try to relate what we're singing around that. So we start with the text, and we find whatever is available that's the best that would mirror what's being taught, so that our people can leave with hopefully one or two cohesive ideas from that day of worship.
Well, I just echo exactly what Aaron said. I kind of prepare the exact same way, and I really try to hear from the Lord and try to, get with our senior pastor, whoever's speaking that day, and just kind of the whole theme of the day and kind of plan the worship for that. So it's not just, two separate services. Like we have the music and then we have the message, and everything's kind of in its own little world. We try to bring everything together into one cohesive thought.
Travis is talking today about the second commandment, which tells us not to worship images. And he's talking about how sometimes even the style of worship that we choose can become something that we worship in itself, and that we can lift it to a place where it doesn't belong, and that style becomes the main thing instead of, who we're worshiping, that we're worshiping the same God. So what's your take on that?
When I think of the word worship, I don't think of it necessarily in terms of what we do on a Sunday. I think of it as what we're bringing to God with our life. And how does our life reflect Him? How do I reflect the beauty of Jesus? How do I reflect the love of Jesus? How do I embody the values that He teaches us and that He commands us to embody? And so I think of worship in that way. But when I think of praise, it's the outward expression of what is going on in me. So that can be reflected in so many different ways. But if you really want to break it down, it's in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 and 2. He says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship."
I think what we have to remember is what Jesus said. When you worship, worship in spirit and in truth. Worship with the Spirit of God, which gives us life, and worship with the truth, and that's in regards to the truth of the Bible. Those two have to be evenly and perfectly wed together. And we do that, I think we can have a great and a beautiful, as you said, worship experience. And another word of, I think a word of caution in this arena of thinking of worship styles and everything, it's really easy in our church market or our church culture today to get so hung up on the personality of who is the preacher or who is the worship leader. And the Apostle Paul warned against that. He said, be careful not to follow this person or that person. Again, the importance is to worship in spirit and in truth, not necessarily the people who are leading worship.
That's great. Well, you've given us a lot to think about. I appreciate both of you and both of your worship styles, and thanks for talking with me today.
Thanks a lot.
Today, we're talking about the second commandment, the commandment against creating idols. And here's the biggie, perhaps the most common idol: imagining God as we want Him to be. The 18th century French philosopher Voltaire said, "God made us in His image, and we returned the favor." Boy, did he nail that one. There's a great temptation to create God in our image. Here's what I mean. We're tempted to imagine God as we want Him to be instead of how He has revealed Himself. We're tempted to project our preferences onto God and make Him out to be something He is not, and that is idolatry. Some, for example, have made God out to be a sappy grandfather. Lots of folks don't like the idea of God as the commandment giver. Lots of folks don't like the idea of God's wrath. Lots of folks think it's offensive that there might be eternal implications to our spiritual choices. And so we have created God in our own image. We've turned Him into a boys will be boys and girls will be girls God. We've turned Him into a permissive God, an indulgent God, a wink and a nod God. But we don't get to do that. The created has no such authority over the Creator. God is holy. There's an amazingness to His grace and a wideness to His mercy, but there is a fierceness to His justice. To encounter God, Isaiah said, is to cry, "Woe is me!" And we don't get to explain that away in our reinvention of God. God is love for sure. He's just not sappy. To create sappy grandfather God is idolatry. Now, on the other hand, and at the other extreme, there are those who make God out to be a tyrant. Remember Jim Bakker, the famous TV evangelist who had the PTL club and the big Christian theme park named Heritage USA, and a former famous wife named Tammy Faye, and who, by the way, got locked up for fraud? Hear the words of his son, Jay. As I was growing up, I never thought of God as a God of love and grace. Instead, He was an eye, the eye in the sky. Jay Bakker continued, "That's the kind of God I grew up with. Even though I was raised in the home of one of the most famous pastors in the country, I didn't know anything about grace or God's accepting love. To me, God was keeping a giant scorecard, so I'd better live up to His standards or get hit on the head with His big old bat. I'd better do everything just right, he thought, or I was dead meat. Now, I understand why J. Baker invented in his mind a tyrannical God. He projected his childhood experiences onto God and made God out to be the evil eye in the sky. I understand why bad fathers and abusive church leaders and unexplainable tragedies make people see God as callous, cruel, ruthless, mean. I understand it. But we don't get to create a tyrannical God any more than we can create a sappy God. To create in our minds a God who is callous, cruel, ruthless, and mean is idolatry, for that's not who He is. God would say, you don't get to think of me in any way other than how I have revealed myself in my Word in Scripture. Patrick Morley wrote, the turning point of our lives is when we stop seeking the God we want and start seeking the God who is. When we seek our own independent way, we try to remake God the way we want Him rather than know Him as He really is. In history, they call it idol worship. Let's not worship our conception of God. Let's worship God as He has revealed Himself. God has revealed Himself in the Bible as both holiness and love. He is holy with all the standards that implies, and He is love with all the safety that implies. We have to hold God's holiness and His love in balance when we think of Him. We don't get to reinvent God. That's idolatry. In closing, I want you to see a really important verse from the Bible. Jonah 2:8 reads, those who cling to worthless idols forfeit the grace that could be theirs. A lot of folks are forfeiting grace, not taking advantage of God's unconditional, undeserved, unlimited, unrelenting love by clinging to idols, religious ideas we've conjured up in our own minds. I invite you to place your faith in the one who offers grace, not in some idol, but in the one true God who revealed Himself in Jesus. He who is holy, to be sure, and yet who loves you with an unconditional, undeserved, unlimited, unrelenting love.
How great this love. Oh, it's moving all my mountains. This perfect love is casting out my fear. How great this love. Oh, it welcomes me like family. And anywhere I go, it meets me there. 'Cause He is good. He is God. What I earn, it's not what I got. He is just, yet oh so kind. What I deserve, it's not what I find. What more could I say about my God's love? How great this love. Oh, it's faithful through my failure. This trusted love is with me till the end. How great this love. Oh, it's closer than a brother. This is love. He died so I could live. He is good. He is God. What I earn, it's not what I got. He is just, yet oh so kind. What I deserve, it's not what I could I say about it? My God is love. He is love. I know my God is love. I know my God is love. This is enough to know my God is love. I know my God is love. I know my God is love. This is enough to know my God is love. I know my God is love. I know my God is love. This is enough to know my God is love. I know my God is love. I know my God is love. This is enough to know my God is love. He is good. He is God. What I earn, it's not what I got. He is just, yet oh so kind. What I deserve, it's not what I find. What more could I say about it? My God is love. What more could I say about it? My God is love. What more could I say about it? My God is love.
Hi everyone, I'm Holly Knupp, Minister to Median Adults at First Baptist Huntsville. We are folks in our 40s and 50s, married, single, and empty nesters. We'd like to invite you to any of our in-person studies, small groups, or social events. Check out our website or email me at holly@fbchsv.org for more information. We look forward to building community and growing our faith together with you.